So let me start by telling you a little bit about how I got to where I am. Or a little bit, or actually tell you a relatively long story about that, because I think it's sort of instructive relative to the point I want to make eventually about how I think we should live one's life. And that's, I was a math student. I really wanted to study mathematics. My parents actually were economists, and they were very happy for me to study mathematics. My father actually loved mathematics. I was taught mathematics by my father, before I learned a lot of it in school, and, he encouraged me, and I think the plan was very much for me to be a mathematician, or at least study mathematics and see where that goes. And as a part of that, I took some math courses, and I took in the exam for the Indian Statistical Institute, which was then the best place in India to study mathematics, and it was a kind of hard exam, and they picked 15 people, and these people come from all over the country, and they give you some stipend, and you really devote your life to mathematics, and that seemed attractive till I started doing it, and then I realized that it was a dreadfully boring life. It was because first you had to get up at 5 a.m, do your homework, then go to class, do 6 hours of mathematics, and second, there was just no social life. It was very, very much like being in a monastery. You had to be, basically, you go to sleep at 9, get up at 5, you do mathematics, and I was 17, and that was not me. I was not fit for that particular life, so I just didn't. Eventually, I told my parents, look, I can't do this. This is too tedious. And my parents were extremely kind and liberal people, and they said, okay, fine, but then you have to find out something to do. You can't just do nothing. And the problem was that in the Indian system, many of you are from India, the problem is that once you are out of that loop, then you're really out of it, meaning there's a time for every exam. And so if you really change your mind, then there's very little you can do. The flexibility is all gone, because it's all based on exams that you take between your, at the end of your high school. And if you haven't taken the right exam, you haven't applied to whatever, the Indian Institute of Science or to IIT, then you're kind of done. So I didn't really have an option. And so at that point, it seemed like I needed to make a game plan for a more contingent game. But a lot of the plans I made were in fact completely contingent, meaning, okay, I'll do something now, and I'll take the SAT. And now once I take the SAT, maybe I can apply to a US university. And it was not a very common thing to do, but few people were doing it, and I thought maybe I could do that. There was all kinds of pretty far-fetched maybe and contingent plans that we're making, and I wasn't really thinking very much about what I would like to do, since it was all about, let me do something now, and then I'm going to figure it out. And in that spirit, my father suggested, well, economics might be a good place, because, if you don't figure it out, at least it gives you some kind of a career. Lots of people do it to get a job. You get an MBA, and if you figure it out and you want to do something else, you can kind of move out and you keep some of your math skills. And it was very much a contingent, practical decision. And I went along with that, and as you might say, it worked out pretty well. So I did that, and then after 3 years, you have to again figure out what to do. And I wasn't really any more mature or decided than I was at 17. I still had really no particular passion for economics. But I had kind of given up my passion for mathematics, so I was left with less passion. I was in general interested in many things. I liked history, I liked literature, I liked philosophy, I liked music, but I wasn't clear what I should do for a career. And again, many of my friends who were with me in my undergraduate were all going to go to Delhi. We were studying at Kolkata to study somewhere, and so they said, let's go to Delhi and we'll apply to master's program. We'll all go to Delhi and study there. So a bunch of us applied to master's programs in Delhi, and there were two master's programs basically at JNU and Delhi School of Economics. I did well in those, so they were. So I got into both, and then I was trying to decide where to go. And I remember a moment that was very decisive. I went to the Delhi School of Economics, and I met a young professor there who later became quite prominent, and he was super nice, and he was trying to encourage me to go to Delhi School of Economics. And he told me, look, this is where everybody comes to go to do a PhD in the US. That's the next step, and you surely want to do that, so you should come here. And that sounded so boring. Another step, and then going to the US, like a whole, pre-professional route to my career goals. So my God, I'm 20 and I'm not about to commit to a whole career stream. So I immediately, that convinced me that I'm not going to Delhi School of Economics, I'm going to JNU. So I went to JNU exactly for the wrong reasons, which is that it should have just sounded less boring. And then again, 2 years go by fast, and then at the end of 2 years, I'm again sitting and metaphorically maybe sucking my thumb, thinking, what should I do? And I had some nice professors who were saying, okay, you're a good student. We can write you letters to go to the US universities if you apply. So and I had a friend who said, look, why don't you go take the GRE? And again, sort of buffeted by many of my kind friends and the wisdom of others, I went and applied, and extremely lucky to get in. I would say extremely lucky. I mean, looking at the admissions process now, I say, why did they admit me? I've sort of been on the other side of that process for many, many years. And I said, why did they admit me? They shouldn't have, but whatever. They made some mistake. So I got in. And then it was sort of, again, for a while, it was a little bit boring. But then eventually, I kind of found my legs, and even then, I think there was a lot of learning to do. I was an economist, but I was what economists call a theorist, somebody who makes abstract models of the world and tells you stories about, if this happened, this other things could happen. So very much about the kind of abstract mathematical objects rather than what the work that I do now, which is about, how do you solve this problem? What works? How do you solve this problem or that problem? And it was completely different. As different within economics as it could possibly be. I was kind of a mathematical economist who was doing elaborate mathematical models. And then I did my PhD, I got a job, I was teaching at Princeton, and then I got a chance to come back to teach at Harvard, which was where I had been a PhD student. And I found that attractive. Problem was, what would I teach? There was plenty of people to teach theory, so somebody asked me, what do you want to teach? I said, I had done a little bit of work, kind of theoretical work on what you could call development economics. So I said, okay, fine, I'll give it a shot. I'll teach development economics. And I never taught it. I never taken a class in development economics. Literally never been a part of that conversation. And suddenly I was teaching PhD students at a place like Harvard development economics. Why did they let me do it? Well, mostly because development economics was seen as a very dead field. It's not interesting. So nobody really wanted to teach it. So I thought, okay, fine. If I ask for that, they'll let me do it. Since it's no one's terrain. And indeed, that turned out to be true. So they were very kind. They let me do it. So that's how I started doing development economics. even after I became a development economics, I was doing mostly theoretical work, and it was it was going well. I had students, and to be honest, what drove me to thinking about practical questions was mostly my students who were much more passionate about how can I use this today to fix the world. And so I kept thinking, okay, fine, I really need to get to something practical. So I started thinking about more practical issues as a part of that teaching process. And in the meanwhile, my friend and fellow Nobel laureate Michael Kramer was talking to me about, well, why don't we do randomized controlled trials? I said, well, why not? I mean, that was literally at that point, I really wanted to. These randomized controlled trials were a way to get into these more practical questions. The randomized controlled trials, for those of you who don't know what they are these days with COVID-19, I've asked you, probably heard a lot about it. They're kind of large-scale trials of intervention. So if I want to know if a particular education strategy works, I offer it to some people, and I offer it and they are chosen at random, and I compare the outcomes for those who get it, those who don't, and that's how we know that whether it works or not. So that was my so these randomized controlled trials were really used at that point, especially for adjudicating very practical questions in education, in healthcare, etc. And so I said, okay, well, maybe I'll learn something about practical questions. That's how I got into it. Even after I started doing these randomized controlled trials, it wasn't that I was necessarily committed to just doing them and that would become my life and eventually bring me to the Nobel Prize, in a sense. I was still trying to find my feet as maybe as before I was trying to, and in the meanwhile, and what happened in the meanwhile was sort of again an accident, if you like. There were three professors at MIT. This is by the time at MIT. There were other universities who were trying to hire them. So I think as a part of our kind of holding on to us, one morning each of us gets a white envelope. A white envelope which says, "Dear Professor X, the university is happy to offer you a certain fairly small amount of money by today's standards for some project you want to pursue." And we all had these letters, and we went and talked to each other. Said, "Did you get a strange letter saying that you have some money which you can invest in, not in your salary, but in doing something?" And we said, "Yeah, okay, fine." So and then what will you do with it? And I think one insight we had, which was useful, is that we should put it into one thing. Take a big risk. Not diversify it, but do one thing. And since we were all partly doing randomized control trials, maybe we should build something in randomized control trial. So we decided we'll launch something in randomized control trial, some center that will promote the use of randomized control trials. This was what we called at that point Poverty Action Lab. And I think what was very, very clear to me, what is now very, very clear to me, is that at that point we had no idea of how much leverage we would have with this. And I think other people might have. The department chair at that time was a man called Bengt Holmström, who won the Nobel Prize a few years ago, and he was very optimistic. He said, "Look, if there's a good idea, money will come. Don't worry about money." And the president of MIT had the same view. And an MIT donor, a brilliant MIT donor called Mohammed Jamil, he came and he listened to the various pitches of various people at MIT, and he heard us. And somehow he also saw something in us, which I don't think we fully understood. I think there were all these people who had more wisdom than us, more insight. They somehow saw there's something very big here. And partly maybe it's because we went from the world of business, and they had more connections to it. So this idea that you pitch an idea well, it can go miles and miles, but it was clear to them. So in any case, that's how, and after, we turned Poverty Action Lab into Abdul Latif Jameel Poverty Action Lab, which was named after Mr. Jameel's father, and it took over my life and it changed it. As we were awarded what is called the Nobel Prize in Economics. It's a bit of a misnomer. For our experimental approach to alleviating global poverty, which means doing these large randomized experiments where you give some intervention to some people and others, and now there are thousands of experiments that when we started, there were one or two, 6 or 7 examples in the developing world. Now there are thousands in 90 countries, and everybody, and except for COVID-19, I'm sure there will be even more in even more countries. And right now we are a bit paralyzed by the fact that we shouldn't be out there collecting data. But this was a transformative, the prize citation meant organization. This was a completely transformative opportunity. My life was taken over by it. I ended up, of course, doing lots of randomized control trials and publicizing them and talking about the theory behind them, and it became a very big part of my life, and now it's still a very big part of my life. I hope it will continue for the next 20 years and be a very big part of my life. You can see I'm pretty optimistic about the next 20 years. I'll be almost 80 by that. Those 20 years are over, but I'm planning to keep going. And it's been incredible. The journey has been incredible. It's been, both because it's been rewarding, but also because we have both learned a lot. What we've learned has been important. If you read the 2 books I've written with Esther Duflo, Poor Economics and Good Economics for Hard Times, they are replete with examples of insights we've learned from it. These insights have been influencing policy. We feel that this is partly why we get the prize, is that there is a lot of people who think that these were very important insights, and that these insights have had changed the way other people think. So all of that is something that it took off, and more importantly, maybe it was not just us. It became a whole movement. Other people, many of them were my students at MIT or Harvard or someplace like that. They started doing, but many of them not. In the students of students, PhD students who were the PhD students of my PhD students, and so on, my great-grandchildren, if you like, they're all doing randomized control trials. And that's why there are thousands of them now. And the energy, the creativity, the insights keep flowing, and that's it's a wonderful, it's a wonderful endorsement of everything that we set out to do. And I think, again, we were very lucky to be at the right place at the right time. People had a hunger for some form of concrete knowledge, which went beyond the abstractions that economists were playing with, and people had hunger for saying, understanding things in detail. It's not a matter of just saying, education is a good thing. It's a saying of how education, how should it deliver in COVID times. Now that people have to get education on Zoom, what's the best way to do that? That kind of questions that have a lot of texture, that kind of question was not being answered. And we had sort of started asking some questions like that, but we didn't realize how much appetite there was for it. And that appetite kind of carried us. So, to summarize, I plan to go on, but my life was shaped enormously by chance events and by decisions that were taken. So chance events like, this guy in Delhi School of Economics who was trying to make me to come there, I think his one contribution to my life was that he made me go the other way. And I don't think necessarily that would have changed my life, but I think it made me very, I learned lots of things at JNU, which I think eventually made me a better social scientist. So I do think that it did something important to the texture of my life. Decisions taken with much understanding of where they may lead. The whole story of JPAL is one where we can, now that we've been assigned success, I could go out and say that, look, this is something, I saw the shape of everything and that's what made me do this. But it would be a lie. It would be a completely, it would be a made up story. I think we were excited about it. We were having fun. We did it. We enjoyed doing the randomized control trials. There were a new opportunity, a new frontier, and it was a fun thing to do. And it's always exciting to pursue something new. It just wasn't. I don't think we saw that this will get us a Nobel Prize. This will make us, have thousands of people who will be working in the same kind of tradition as us. This kind of influence, the magnitude of influence, I don't think we saw. And I think there was as I was saying, the third piece of that was that on the other hand, we were very willing, and I was very willing, I still am, to desire to see where a new force will carry me. It's new. It might be exciting. It might go wrong, but at least it gives me a decent chance to try something very, very different. And in a sense, I just wanted to. I've always had this desire to just give things a chance and see where they float to, and so this was very much the impulse that drove me in this moment, and so it's been wonderful. So I think that I want to expand on what that might mean for you. So for me, it meant I'm it's easy to say, looking back when you're 60 and, inshallah, you've been successful, and so you can just say that, look, I did all the right things. But it's not that I understood the right things, but I do think there were important lessons, life lessons, for most of you who are much younger than me and who might actually be thinking about this issue. So I would say I was very lucky, very lucky. There's no question that the biggest thing, and this is something for all of you to remember, that when things go wrong, don't blame yourself. Life is so many fine pieces of luck that go the wrong way. I think it's a fool's game to blame yourself. You can always find a way to say, if I had only stayed up that night instead of going to sleep, I would have done better in the exam. But maybe not. Maybe you just be tired. I think that particular set of decisions, I'm really, I think so much of our life is shaped by chance at every level at which, if you're fortunate like me and born into an academic family where there were lots of books, or unfortunate like many others who don't get to grow up with books and with all the advantages I had. I went to a decent school. I never lacked money for food or things like that. So I was very lucky. But there's luck at every level. At even the smallest thing, there's lots of luck. And I think one should completely embrace the fact that luck is always going to be a very big part of your life. But I think I want to say I gave luck a chance. That's an odd sentence, but remember that one. I think that's a good message. I think if you overscript your life, if you try to you write a script, very detailed script, and you stick to it, you often don't get give luck much of a chance. Because luck needs to have a place to operate. If you stick to doing, I'm never going to change my mind, I'm going to always do this, in some sense, luck doesn't have a way to get into your life. And I think it's important to be open, to listen to opportunities, to maybe grab them when they arrive. I think that's an important. I think I was willing to try new things, and I think that I would give so I didn't fixate on specific goals, and the goals were, from the beginning I was fairly sure that if it went one way or the other, I wouldn't be terribly sad. And I think that's very important to be willing to say that, look, I don't want to have this kind of house in this kind of colony in this city with this much income and this car and this job. If you think that in that much detail and you fixate on it, then it's very hard to give luck a chance. I would say, I'll tell you one story about my life which I think still convinces me that I really wasn't particularly sure where I was going, what I really wanted. And I think that's maybe a bit of a good thing. I was, at the end of my days in JNU, you might have read this in the newspaper, if there was a lot of mention of it at some point. I went to Tihar jail for being part of a student protest. I don't think I did anything awful. I think it's legitimate for students to protest. It shows some concern about society. I don't know whether this particular cause was worth pursuing or not. I don't want to defend every cause and every protest, but I don't think we did anything particularly awful. We went to jail for 10 days, I think, in Tihar jail. And when I came out, we had cases after cases against us, like everybody, against 365 of us. So we kind of figured that eventually we dropped, but there were lots of, attempt to murder or this and that, or all kinds of things flying around. And everybody told me, oh, I know you've been admitted to Harvard, but sorry, you're not going. No, the US won't give you a visa. And so I was, and to be honest, this is where I think I really wasn't particularly enamored of this particular plan. I know, because I really wasn't that sad. Go to the US and do something else. So I actually applied to a bunch of NGOs for jobs. I remember one which turned me down quite summarily, but a bunch of NGOs. I said, I wrote them. Those days you wrote postcards by hand and sent it to them and said, maybe I have this record, I'm looking for a position. And so I thought maybe I'll spend a year working, doing something for society, and then I'll figure out what to do. And I was really, and everybody was always walking on eggshells around me because they all thought I was shattered. And in fact, I was not really shattered. And then that was a very relaxed period, way before 9/11 and all that. And the US gave me a visa and I went, and the cases got dropped. The reason I say this is that I think because I was not so fixated on the outcomes, I think that had the wonderful side effect that I could easily kind of tolerate a lot of uncertainty. Because, fine, I won't get to go to the US, but I don't really care. It doesn't matter. I don't need to think about the steps I need to take because, whichever comes, I'll be fine. And I could take snap decisions. I could say, look, yes, I'm going to do, maybe let's do a randomized control trial. Even though I was successful, I had a permanent job at MIT, which is one of the best places to be a professor, and I was as somebody who was doing economic theory of abstract mathematical models, and so I was good at that. I could have stuck to that. I would have had a reasonably successful career, I assume. And I just said, okay, fine, I'm doing this, but I'm not sure I have so much passion for it. And In some sense, you discover your passion in the process. I mean, it's not that I didn't understand at all. I mean, obviously, if you grow up in Kolkata next to a slum, you have some understanding that your economic theory needs to matter in the lives of people who are very different from the ones who are in these models. And so there was some aspiration inside me to make that connection, but it wasn't really that I had a game plan of that I'm going to do this or that. And again, because that setback, the huge setback, really didn't bother me, and that was a big advantage. I think this is often not the life advice that you get. You get the life advice that you need to fix your goal and aim high. High often means conventionally high, lots of money, big name job, etc. Script your path towards the goal, stick to the script, and avoid all distractions. Don't get into a student protest and get taken to Tihar jail. Just stick to your script. And this is the advice we often get. So I hear my friends giving to their children. There's all be committed to your what you're doing. Clearly understand what you need to do. You need to do this exam now, then that exam later, etc. And that's sort of the way a lot of things are. And I want to suggest leaning a bit the other way. I think that where I do agree with the advice is whatever you're doing, do it with passion. Absolutely do it with passion. And don't give up easily. Don't just the first frustration, don't giving up. That's a mistake. Anything you want to do, if you are doing, you're just trying to be an MBA and, the first time you take the exam, you don't do it well enough, do it again. I mean, I do think that it's not a matter of I'm not at all saying beef, feckless, and don't focus on specific social goals. I think that be fair, but be willing to listen to your feelings. If you're doing it with commitment, you're working hard, but you're not enjoying it. Yeah, you have to hear. You have to willing to hear whether you are feeling happy doing it. And I think you need to. I think all of us remember anything you do. If you want to be successful, you're going to do it for 30 years. I had to be an economist for 30 years before I got a Nobel Prize. Okay? So it's a 30-year. I did 30 years of teaching. You're lucky. If 30 years is actually, it might take longer. You have to be just extremely committed. And part of being extremely committed is just enjoying it. It's just very hard to be committed to something that you hate every day. You really need to feel that, okay, I am committed because I love it. I wake up in the morning, I wake up in the morning and I have tons of work to do every day. There's not a day where there isn't a million things I need to get done. And to be honest, I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be, so I think you have to find what you enjoy doing. Let your curiosity drive you. That's the third. When you feel, okay, I'm doing this, that sounds interesting. Maybe it's telling you something. Maybe there is a signal that, your body, your head, there's something there there's some wisdom there, but you haven't understood. That's my story very well. I often made decisions, I didn't understand their full consequences, but I was attracted to them. I thought, okay, maybe I do a randomized controlled trial. Instead of working in my office at MIT, I'm going to spend a lot of time in rural Rajasthan. And that's what is involved in doing a randomized controlled trial. I do it, and maybe that will teach me something, change my perspective of life. And that was very important, that there was something available to change my perspective of life. I think what I think that tells us, and I think this is now I think you see where I'm going, is that you really eventually to both to be successful and to be happy is really the same thing. You're successful and you're happy because you're doing something that's meaningful to you, and that particular I think we're often in this bind where we all feel that this is the formula for success. This is the definition of success that we are given. We're handed the definition by society, and we often don't ask, is it really the case that others believe this? Because we don't. I don't want to question that and look like a wimp, so I don't question it. You don't question it for the same reasons. There's a conspiracy of silence. We all do what society has kind of mandated, but not because we really care about that, but because we have sort of we don't want to deviate from that, the path, the X degree, the Y qualification, the Z job, that particular. I have nothing against any of these jobs. I really think that people do enormous good as as entrepreneurs, as MBAs, as IASs, as teachers, as craftsmen, as people who make saris. I think all of these people, they can be creative, they can be satisfied in their life, they can be brilliant, they can be good to society. All of these, you can play all of the roles you want in anything, but you have to enjoy doing it. And I think I think that's both being happy and being successful. Now, I think what I would say has particularly, I want to underline why I think this is very important at this moment. I think the most important thing we've learned now I'm going to my kind of core competence in economics, from COVID-19 is fragility. I think that what happened, I remember beginning of March, I'm a social scientist, I have lots of information, I talk to lots of people from China, I have lots of students from China, and I didn't understand what's coming. I absolutely didn't understand how big it's going to be and how the reaction is going to paralyze the whole world economy. And I think that nature is extraordinarily powerful and quite unpredictable. And I don't think we are going to be able to sit on top of that elephant and just direct it wherever we want it to go. I think that's an illusion. I think our economics is more and more about so many links that can break. So I have a supply chain which goes through China, but actually it doesn't end in China. My Chinese manufacturer buys some inputs from Malaysia, who buys it from Vietnam. One of those chains breaks, the whole thing breaks. We live in a world where we have built-in fragility, and its fragility accompanies the design for efficiency. It's not an accident. It's not something that we just stupidly happen to have built. It's actually something that we as good economic agents have planned it. We have, in a sense, I want to get the best supplier. I'm not going to get 20 suppliers. I'm going to the best one. But when I get the best one and all the best ones and one cluster in China, then we are building in fragility. And the last thing is that because we're in a fragile world, think of the migrants in India. Suddenly, one morning, they were told no jobs. You lived inside your the construction site where you slept and ate and cooked, and now that's done. No payment, no salary, no wages. Figure it out. And transportation systems. At that point, we the only thing that actually didn't lead to enormous tragedy is the kindness of strangers. Many people like you went out and were generous, were kind, were willing to give things away. The state did some, people did a lot. That's how people survived. I think these three ideas, that we are in a very unpredictable world, that our economic system is very fragile because it's complicated, because it's elaborate, and the idea that we need to work together. I think these three ideas COVID has underlined all of those. They were always true, but they're more true now. And I think that in particular in India, we should worry about the recurrence of COVID-like infections. I don't think this was the last one. I don't think if you think about the record of the last few years, you see that it's been, we almost had SARS, we almost had MERS, and now we have COVID. And so this is not about to go away. I think we can assume that we have done enough violence to nature, that nature is biting back, that the loss of habitats and all of those forces are generating new interactions between animals and humans, and all of that's getting into places where dangerous things can happen. Climate change is even perhaps much more frightening than COVID, to be honest. It's coming. We know it's coming. It's like COVID. I was in March. I was kind of hearing about it. I was not switching on. I think the whole world's been doing that. We've been waiting. When it hits us, it'll hit us so big, and so many human tragedies will have to be dealt with. And then I don't know whether we have the wisdom or the capacity or flexibility to deal with the economic challenges we're through. Inequality is another one. India is absolutely. So I think India is absolutely the cutting edge of all of these. COVID, because we are, I think, we've been so far lucky. I hope we stay lucky, but another infection, given that we're a crowded, dirty place, I think we could easily end up with being in the hotspot, the global hotspot. Climate change, I think we are in the south. We are water scarce country to start with. With climate change, we could just be in a place where there's no water for farmers. Droughts keep becoming more frequent. All of this is happening, by the way. So I think this is a very frightening place. And inequality, our inequality is exploding. We are now more unequal than we were in 1950. After a massive reduction in inequality, and I think that creates social conflicts. There are other social conflicts. So which the social infrastructure, if you like, is a bit fragile, and so we are in this place where all of us need to be more focused on welfare, on making sure that everybody in this fragile world, we really need to make sure that everybody has some protection, they're not going to starve, they're not going to, be put in the most desperate place. And then more solidarity as well. We need to connect to people. For someone starting their career now, this means there's a huge uncertainty about the shape of the future. The world, we don't know what the future is. There are lots and lots of things that can go wrong. So that tells us, let's not obsess on specific pathways, because I think those specific pathways, we don't know how much of that will be available, what will change, what will become important, what will become irrelevant. And I think that we need to work towards a much more giving attitude to life, because I think we'll need to get people, we need to be with people. Obsessing on this I'm going to get to the top is I think you don't know top of which pile, which way the pile goes. So you may be at the top, but the top might be at the bottom. So don't worry about so much being at the top. Worry a lot about, I'm going to be in a place where I can contribute to society and I can build a good society. I think this is actually exciting. I think it offers an opportunity for us to enormous potential to do good, to do satisfying things, to celebrate working with people, for people, making the future we want. I think if I were you, I would be very excited about the future. Maybe it's frightening, but at least it is a really wonderful opportunity to remake the world. If you were young, don't fixate on conventional opportunities. Look for what you can do to make a better world. And I think if we do all try, we can. Thank you, and good luck with your lives.